every set. Intensity, intensity, intensity. Effort relative to failure is there beyond failure all the time. And I noticed there is a way to fail correctly as well. So I would do full range of motion for as much as possible. You hit technical failure. You can't get your chin above the bar. And then you integrate in some bodybuilding principles. You do some stretch partials, working towards true muscular failure. That is what I like about calisthenics. It constrains your exercise options so you progress more than the person who gets sucked into program hopping, exercise hopping, which is a huge temptation at the gym.
So I'm going to kick things off with calisthenics. You started at 17, learning at places like the Barbarians forums, and you even made your own PVC parallel bars. As someone with over a decade of experience in this craft, can you tell me what are people getting wrong about calisthenics in a hypertrophy standpoint in as much detail as possible?
Firstly, kudos for doing the research, going back into the 2010 archive of my history. So thanks for that. People believe calisthenics doesn't build muscle is a big myth. It absolutely can. And especially if you're able to hit failure up to 30 reps on an exercise, pull-ups, push-ups, dips, then based on the huge amount of research that we've got on hypertrophy, low reps work to build muscle, moderate, high reps work to build muscle. And the average person that's getting into fitness isn't strong enough at the basic calisthenic movements to think they're beyond them for hypertrophy. And having this base level of calisthenics, especially when you start your fitness journey, it really does serve your body well because you get basic coordination, you build up that stability in all the different planes of motion. And to think that you just have to jump straight into lat pull downs, bench press, it's doing yourself a disservice from the joy that calisthenics can offer.
And why would you say it's doing a disservice? You know, there's lots of people, like when I go to the gym, they only do machines or they only do barbells. And then there's some people who only do calisthenics. Like, where do you think it really has that benefit? And why are even a lot of more intermediate lifters shying away from the weighted pull-ups or the weighted dips, or even just doing more high volume calisthenics?
It's hard and it's humbling, calisthenics. To get into it, you can't just set the weight on a pin in the lat pull down and have success straight away. You can't just, with a bench press, jump in and do the bar straight away. People often struggle even doing their body weight on pull-ups, on push-ups, and it requires a little bit more thought and education to do the progressions. Or you have to start doing eccentrics to build your strength in reverse. You might have to use bands. All of these things humble you, and especially when you're getting into fitness and you're insecure, which we all are when we start because it's a foreign world, then you're less likely to do things that you feel awkward or shy doing. And moving to intermediate calisthenics, it's probably just not highlighted enough the merit of loading up your pull-ups and also your dips as a primary compound exercise. And you'll see from this conversation, it's not all just calisthenics is great or just gym is perfect. You know what? On the internet, especially with long form fitness, there's room for both works.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's really important because I think people get into this trap where they watch these exercise tier videos, and these videos will tell them, no, the lat pull down is better than the weighted pull-up for hypertrophy, or it's better than the pull-up in general for hypertrophy because it has more stability and, whatever reasons it may be. And someone may be discarding it when it's actually a fantastic exercise. So I feel like sometimes this whole research and us always wanting to rank and tier things actually makes it so some really good and difficult exercises are discarded. What are your thoughts on that?
Couldn't agree more. And that's where I've seen a shift in modern fitness, where we've got so many options, so many exercises, and we tend to hide away from what actually matters most, which is intensity. I mean, I've got a background in academia. I did a exercise and sports science degree. I'm a qualified physiotherapist. So as much as the next geek on the internet that loves talking about biomechanics and studies, I've almost come to this point where I'm trying to really highlight intensity. And the great archetype for this is the GOAT, Eric Bugenhagen. He embodies this to 100 out of 10. And I think if we can try and get some of that into our own training, we're going to get rid of all that paralysis by analysis. Maybe I need to do this type of vertical pull because it's superior to the other one. They all work, bro. With sufficient progressive overload, with sufficient intensity, they're fantastic. You can get into the minutiae of this one might be better under this context of stability or range of motion because you can push your muscles further. But for the most part, if you're choosing exercise that you can enjoy doing, that have progression capacity in them, and you train hard, you're going to do better than 80% of the population, without a doubt.
Yeah, and if we go back to intensity, I think even from a body weight standpoint, if you're doing calisthenics, you know when you're near failure. Like it's hard to leave 7 in the tank. Like you know if it's difficult. Maybe there's 1 more in there, maybe there's 2 more in there, but there's not 7 more in there where there might be with machines.
And with the calisthenics-based movements, it has a great stimulus to fatigue ratio, this whole RP strength terminology, where you can do a lot of volume and really push your sets to failure. And you can dust yourself off, rest 3 to 5 minutes, do another set. There's tons of people doing calisthenics just in parks, and all they have is just their body weight, maybe some very light cinder blocks that they put between their legs to do pull-ups and dips. And they're getting jacked, man. On average, they're looking so much better than the person that's going to the gym with the optimal routine, 6 different back exercises, 6 different pushing exercises. The people doing calisthenics, where it shines is you don't have many options. You've got your push-up, you've got your dip, you might have a vertical press of a pike push-up or a handstand push-up. You have to put your heart and soul into those. By comparison to going to the gym, especially if it's a well-equipped gym, you could have 15 different machines to do pushing, cables, free weights. That is what I like about calisthenics. It constrains your exercise options, so you progress more than the person who gets sucked into program hopping, exercise hopping, which is a huge temptation at the gym.
And you were talking about like stimulus to fatigue. I actually think that's why something like a push-up is just so underrated, because if you're a beginner, you can do just basic push-ups. You can bust out high volume, high reps, and you can get better at it. You can get stronger at the skill, and you can build muscle. And then you can start doing more difficult variations over time. So even though it's something really simple that, you could do it right now, I almost feel like people want things to be so tricky that they discard something like the push-up. Like, oh, that's not cool enough. Like, any thoughts on that?
It's complexity masquerading as effort. You can find ways to make things more optimal, but if you're doing that to make it easier, then you're shooting yourself in the foot because it needs to be hard. We could talk about all the science, but it has to be hard. And the push-up, I'm a huge fan of this exercise in terms of intermediates or people that are advanced as well. If you're doing beyond 30 push-ups, which if you've been training for about a year, you'd be able to get to this point of, at least on a max out set, gun to your head, do 30 push-ups, you'll be able to do it.
Yeah.
You can overload this exercise as well. Get a dip belt, put it around your mid-back, elevate your hands and feet, bam, weighted push-up till the end of time. You can load it heavy for sets of 5 to 8. You can put just a little bit of weight on there, do 10 to 20 reps. It'll keep you challenged for life.
Yeah, I do deficit. So I put my feet on the bench and then I have parallettes and I have a weighted vest and like to do a lot of work in kind of that 10 to 20 rep range. And I find it's just a nice way to add volume, and I can push myself to failure without any real fear of injuring myself.
Yep. And you throw rings in the mix. Here we go. Here's the ultimate segue. Rings plus calisthenics equals huge aesthetics and also feels absolutely great in your body because the rings move. You got more stability in there because you have to control yourself, which is missing from if you were to do purely machine press. And the push-up as well, the added benefit that you're getting, the serratus anterior, because you're retracting to protraction, and it just helps with overall shoulder health. So on average, you'll find, oh, when I do push-ups in my routine, you know what? My shoulders feel pretty good because you miss that from a bench press where you're just stuck into retraction the whole time.
Yeah, absolutely. And what are your thoughts on having a full range of motion when doing calisthenics? Because a lot of people will do things like kipping and say, hey, I can do 50 pull-ups. And it seems like that wouldn't be the best either from a skill standpoint or a hypertrophy standpoint.
No, it's not. I mean, if you're trying to learn an exercise for the first time and just get a feel for your body moving through space in, say, a muscle up, I'm not against it. It's the equivalent of saying you can't do an exercise until you have perfect mobility. Then you might be waiting a very long time to just have fun and play. You'll see I keep coming back to that because the average person that's watching this wants to have fun. You got to make your training fun to do it long term. And with that muscle up, if you do find that you are having a kip so much, it is a sign you got to build your basics. There's a reason why you need to use so much momentum because you haven't built up your pull-up prowess, you know, how explosive you are at doing, say, your chest to bar, stomach to bar, or you don't have enough weighted pull-up strength to be able to do enough power to get yourself up and over the bar for muscle-ups.
Yeah, absolutely. I think something that I find challenging is, let's say I'm doing weighted pull-ups and I'm doing a full range of motion. I'm doing my chest to the bar. I can't use necessarily as much weight or do as many reps as if I'm doing chin to bar. So sometimes I wonder, like, if the range of motion was slightly less, would I be able to push up the intensity? But I also want to have consistent reps so I can track it over time.
It depends on the goal. If you've got very specific strength goals, i.e. you want to compete in pull-up competitions where the standard is chin clearing bar height, then you're best to train at that range of motion to build specificity. Whereas if your goal is a bit more general, being hypertrophy, there's room to do either or both. You can have one workout where you're doing that full range of motion, trying to get that huge contraction at the top. And then you can also have an ego day where you just chuck on as much weight as possible, just clear your chin above the bar, and that's fantastic. The takeaway here is full range of motion good for calisthenics? It depends. If you only want to build strength specifically to do an exercise, then you need to use a range of motion that reflects the goal that you have. If you have hypertrophy goals, I recommend blending both. So I would do full range of motion for as much as possible. You hit technical failure, you can't get your chin above the bar, and then you integrate in some bodybuilding principles. You do some stretch partials, working towards true muscular failure. So you might add an extra 3 to 4 reps where you're just getting your head to the bar, and you're getting up halfway, then a quarter. That way you can guarantee that you've fully stimulated your back, which gives you the best of both worlds. And I think people that do calisthenics also want hypertrophy, but they're not adding in those stretch partials, you're missing out on dormant gains.
Yeah, I like how you're talking about kind of having a flexible approach and doing what makes sense for the job. But I think if we come back to how you said, you're talking about Eric Bugenhagen, for example, I feel like something that's actually there where he's actually the most optimal is that he follows his curiosity and what he's excited about. And that level of enthusiasm shows in the training. And I feel like there's just a passion that's required to really excel and be present when you're training as opposed to overcomplicating things.
Definitely, and that's why I choose calisthenics to my base level of training option to this day, because people would ask, why are you doing a handstand? What's the point? I just want to do a handstand. I think it's fun. They think there's some deeper purpose behind everything you do, but it circles back to fun. And I find that with calisthenics, there's just something special about that freedom of movement when you're lifting yourself in a muscle up. It just feels dope, dude. When you're doing a handstand push-up and there's this level of danger, you're going to hit your head, but you're strong enough to lower down, come back up, and dominate gravity. Plus, if you're training with these hypertrophy principles, you're going to look jacked as well. So you're going to be capable, aesthetic, and you're going to have fun with your training, which is just a combination for consistency and being essentially addicted in a good way to wanting to do your workouts. I find that there's rarely a calisthenics session where I'm dragging my feet, oh, here we go, I've got to do this again. But if I was put on a purely hypertrophy program with tons of machines and because it's optimal, because I can get more volume and work closer to failure, it would bore me and I wouldn't put as much effort in. I would slowly lose interest in what I'm doing. And that would be a big shame because I think at large, everyone should have a fitness habit, routine until the end of time.
For sure. And it should be something that they're excited about. So I do want to talk about the skill aspect. So something I notice is that most people go to the gym to look better and build muscle. But eventually what ends up happening is they may find after a year, they end up doing the big three and they're doing powerlifting. So this leads to a complete change of goals. Powerlifting is a skill focused on minimizing the range of motion to get the weight up. Hypertrophy is almost the opposite. Does the same thing happen with calisthenics when someone's trying to look shredded and jacked, but they end up falling in the niche and really focusing on skills?
Yeah, for sure. There's different categories of calisthenics. You've got your sets and reps where you're just doing high volume, working a failure, trying to get the physique, more bodybuilding style. You have street lifting where it is essentially the powerlifting of calisthenics. You're competing in your 1 rep max on the muscle up, the pull up, the dip, and also the squat. You get a total, and that requires very specific training. Then you've also got the world of freestyle, where it's about skills. So you're doing muscle up 360, you're doing a front lever hold in there, you're going into a Maltese, you're doing all these crazy combinations and planches and stuff. Like everything, you need to train in a way that suits your goal. Where people go wrong with calisthenics is they'll try and do absolutely everything. They're trying to get their heaviest dip, pull up, muscle up, and they're also trying to do the skills. And it starts to, at a certain point, really limit your rate of progress. So, I mean, you can do everything at once, but you need to be having realistic expectations that your progress will be really slow, especially the more that you add. The more specific you are, the better you'll get.
And how would you look at that through your journey? Have you had different phases where you were more excited about one of those things than the other? And then I guess where have you landed at this point?
My passion's always been with the sets and reps. I just love, lots of time under tension, pushing the sets close to failure, doing a lot of volume, doing several exercises, trying to be more of a generalist, jack of all trades, not trying to reach peak performance in any one exercise. So that in the start of my journey when I was 17, built up a really good foundation, which is awesome because then you have some muscle mass that you can then teach in your calisthenics skills and you'll find the journey will be much quicker. So I had several years where I worked on the foundation. And then I was getting excited seeing these beasts doing front levers and planches. I'm like, yeah, I'll give that a go too. But my journey was a little bit slow because my excuse, 6 foot tall, around 85 kilos, longer levers. We know that everything else equal, someone shorter, lighter will progress faster than someone taller and heavier. We just have to look at gymnastics. You're not seeing many 6'5" people on the rings or doing pommel horse and stuff. It doesn't suit that demographic. So I transitioned to the skill stuff, but my mistake was still trying to do too many of the basics at the same time. You've only got so much recovery capacity. And if you're just trying to continue doing all those sets and reps plus all the static holds, it can really slow down progress. And then you just get into this excessive fatigue. So over time, through just noticing that I'm not progressing, plus getting some extra niggles, aches and pains that forced me to look at my training, I had to shift gears to more skill stuff. And when I did that, surprise, surprise, the progress was much quicker. But a struggle that we all have is trying to coach ourselves. Because if I looked at your program, it'd be easier for me to say, oh, you're doing too much volume for back. That's why you can't push as hard on your pushing muscles. But when it's your own training, it's a little bit harder to let things go, I find.
Yeah, it really is, right? Like you might look at something and say, okay, there's too much volume there. You might even say that to your own program. But when you're in the gym and you're done that and you still want to do one or two more exercises, you kind of convince yourself that like, okay, more is better, more effort. When it's maybe just more effort on the sets that you should do as opposed to doing those extra sets. But I think early on, it's kind of fun to maybe go a little bit more to all out, because that's how you build that habit and that identity and that excitement with the hobby. And then you can ease, right? Like I feel like for myself, instead of just going all out all the time, there's like periods of intensity and there's periods of less intensity. And over time it compounds.
Of course, it waxes and wanes in terms of how much you do, how hard you can train. But similar to investing, it's a long-term horizon. You're going to have ebbs and flows, but if you're showing up, being consistent over weeks and months, getting an extra few reps, adding a little bit more weight, that's what matters. Even just the same workout feeling easier, that's a form of progressive overload. And this is something you have to adopt if you've been training for 3 years consistently, because how beginner gains, noobs train, it's completely different. You really got to respect your recovery, and keeping a workout log allows you to have more objective restraint, because if you didn't keep any form of tracking, you'd just be guessing, oh, I think I used 40 kilos on the dip last week and I think I did 10 reps, and then you end up doing 16 when in actual fact you only did 8. You've essentially doubled how much you've done in that time. Whereas if you had it written down, you at least have a chance of being more objective and saying 2 extra reps today is enough.
For sure. I'm pretty anal with tracking. Like if I'm doing myo reps, I'll track it like 16.4, .3, .2. So I know, okay, that's what I did last time. I can come in with focus. Let's see if I can tie that or beat that with relatively good form.
Yeah, and the people that are more on the edge of training hard all the time, your superpower is going to be restraint. I know that this is for me, so I can speak to if I was coaching myself. I have to err on the side of just live to fight another day. You know, you could do so much more in this workout if you're feeling great, setting PRs. But think about PRing week after week or every couple of weeks, because I just know from so much history of pushing myself really hard in one workout or 1 week, it just cooks you for the rest of the upcoming weeks, or you're forced to take a deload sooner than you should. It's about trying to milk progress as long as you can.
Yeah, I used to get like bicep tendonitis and some issues with my shoulder. And once I added more recovery days and decreased the volume, it just magically went away and I was still progressing. So I was like, okay, this is what I can recover from. Whenever I increase the volume significantly, this bicep tendonitis keeps coming back. And I don't want it to come back. So how do I solve for that?
You nailed it. Your personal progression is the best proxy for any decision that you can make. Because I know if you're consuming a lot of fitness content, it can be really overwhelming. We're talking about how much volume should you do? Should you train to failure? Should you leave reps in reserve? What are the best exercises? It can really take the fun away from your workouts. But if you have your program there, and then you use auto-regulation, you keep track of things, the best judge in the moment of what to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I find that even kind of in the startup world where people always say like, this is the best practice for business. This is the best practice for marketing. This is what the research shows on how to get users. And I'm like, I'm just not feeling it. I'm just going to do what I want and use some trial and error and see if it lands or not. And if it doesn't land, I'll try something else. And I'm willing to try that, but I'm also not betting that that's the only way to do things.
That's what I've seen for the majority of advanced lifters, both that have reached a good level and also people in academia as well. They tend to use themselves as an experiment or a lot of anecdotal stories from other people, which in evidence-based practice, that's blasphemous. You know, oh, geez, that's the lowest form of research. But you can learn so much from it, and you really shouldn't discredit people's opinions and personal experiences. But at the same time, it's not so simple, right? You need to assess what's the agenda. Maybe they're saying, you know, high intensity training's the bee's knees, and, you know, they've got a program that they're selling for that or a course. So you need to use a bit of skepticism as well.
Yeah, a lot of the people I know who are successful, they just naturally like to tinker with things. They just like to tinker and do trial and error and to test different things and have their own hypothesis and then test it. And they just have that kind of pattern. And then that kind of makes them into learning machines because they're learning what's working and what's not.
Exactly.
Cool. All right, I'm going to move in directions here. So you recently trained with GVS. Since you've interviewed him in the past and you've seen his training, you must have had expectations of how the training would go. So what is one thing that went better than expected and one thing that went worse than expected?
Firstly, that was a absolutely awesome week of training. I traveled to China to connect and collab with Jeff, and it was such a fun experience, man, to be able to do that. I'm so grateful that, you know, with the YouTube channel, it's afforded me some connections to be able to do this for my own selfish interest, to have just a hardcore week of training with a bro, but also to document that and teach people on my FitnessFAQs channel the lessons from the trenches, as well as what he's researched, what I've researched, etc. One of the key takeaways from Jeff, intensity. My goodness, that man knows how to push a set, and not just a top set, every set. Intensity, intensity, intensity. Effort relative to failure is there beyond failure all the time. And I noticed there is a way to fail correctly as well. You can get to the point where you've, you know, reached that technical failure on a curl, you can't get up all the way, and then you know, based on the science, I got to do some stretch partials.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at people's partials and they're not really trying. You're kind of just going through the motions and just dropping it down really quickly, which is what I was doing. And I had this epiphany in the moment when I was doing lateral raises with Jeff. I was getting my last ones and I was just kind of swinging my arms up like this, but I wasn't really putting effort into it.
Yeah.
And I did like 6, 8 partials. In my mind, I think this is good. But I watched Jeff and he does only like 3, but he's trying to get an isometric. He's putting everything into every single rep. So learning to embody that, especially on safe movements, machines, isolations, that's going to transform my physique 100%. And I know it's going to help a ton of people. What didn't go so well was how much fatigue was accrued in 6 consecutive days of workouts. Because on paper, you think, oh yeah, I'm going to go for a week, maximize my time with Jeff. We'll do 6 workouts. We'll, you know, go film some talking videos on off days as well. But when you're training to this level of intensity, doing all the big compound movements and putting your heart and soul into it, by the time it was the 5th day, we were both wiped out. So it was nice to know that it wasn't just me being a little pansy, can't handle any workload. I also put Jeff through his paces, so that's something I'm pretty proud of as well.
Yeah, I think we've all actually probably been through that where you're just not present in a set or you're not present when you're doing your partials. So I think that's just something to really be mindful of. And it seems like you learned a lesson there in terms of like, am I really in each rep here? Am I focusing on the muscle? Am I focusing on the whole? Like, especially when the set's already done safely and you're kind of putting in that extra work. There's a difference between putting in the extra work for the sake of it as a bonus or trying to get everything out of that extra work.
Especially with bodybuilding and hypertrophy, being present means everything, because your body, your mind is going to always look for a way to avoid pain and avoid discomfort. Another example, I understand that when you train hard, your rep speed should slow down. And that is a sign that you've done a good set for muscle growth. What I've found myself doing recently is almost going through the motions in that respect too. Like you're getting towards the end of a set and you can almost fake it yourself. Oh, the rep speed's kind of slowing down, but you're not putting the full effort into the rep. But if you did, the rep speed would be fine. You could do another 5 reps. So not taking your foot off the gas is also another important thing with that failure piece, because your body will find ways to hide away from doing the work.
Yeah, it's really tricky, right? It wants to use other stronger muscles, and then once you know something like that rep speed, then you try to trick yourself saying, oh, it's slowing down. I probably only have one more in the tank, right? And then you do it and you're like, okay, I beat the number. It feels good. But
It's
maybe there was more
failure,
there.
not muscular failure. You're choosing to stop and you're choosing to slow the rep down. This is where it can really screw with your mind, and it's just, you can't take shortcuts if you really want results.
Did you get him to do any calisthenics?
I did a few. Yeah, people have got that to look forward to. I got him to attempt a front lever, which, bless his soul, Jeff. It was essentially a hanging knee raise, but everything's going to be hard when you're 106 kilos. It's easier for me to comment being, doing front levers practically since I came out of the womb and weighing 15 kilos less than him. But all respect to Jeff, he smashed those dips at his body weight. We did dips as well. I think I pumped out 30 just to show for the camera that I can do some calisthenics, and then Jeff hopped in, did at least 15 as well. So he held his own.
Awesome. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw out a couple of topics, and you tell me if they're underrated, overrated, or appropriately rated. The first one is short rest times.
Overrated, both for strength, both for endurance, both for muscle growth, because we need that more restoration of our energy sources to give our best effort, produce as much force, maximize our performance. If we're resting for really short periods of time, it's going to be great to get a pump and your workouts will be quite quick. But at the end of the day, if you have the time to rest, 3 minutes to get at least 90+% of that ATP PC, then you'll perform better on any exercise that you do, both compound and isolation. So rest longer is better. I would almost rest longer and choose less exercises if you're constrained by time.
Yeah, I would agree with that, because from my experience, and I see this when YouTubers will say like, oh, the data shows that shorter rest and longer rest is kind of the same thing. But in experience, when I'm doing a set of deadlifts close to failure or a set of weighted pull-ups to failure, I need like 4 or 5 minutes to give max effort on the next set. I've tried doing 2.5 minutes even, or 2 minutes, and I'm like doing 3 less reps than I would if I gave myself 5. And I know 5 seems like a lot, but if that's what's required, that's what's required.
It's the systemic stress from just that neural fatigue of just a big compound exercise and lots of effort, plus also cardiorespiratory fitness. Most of us here, unless we're doing hybrid training, are going to get gassed after a set of 15. And if you're resting for 30 seconds between sets, I can't imagine that your heart rate has even dropped anything and your respiratory rate is probably still really high. So there's no point even discussing this. It's a huge overrated resting short time.
All right, next one is dumbbell pullovers.
Also done your research here. Big fan. I think that the benefits here are beyond pure hypertrophy, because by loading yourself up into shoulder flexion overhead, you're going to improve range of motion in your shoulders, which most lifters are lacking. Overhead press, pull-ups, people are often getting their arms to here. They're not able to lift up all the way. If you do it across the bench, you can get some thoracic extension, you can get some rib cage expansion. So all these things are helpful as well. And I believe based on tweaking your technique, you can make it emphasize the chest or triceps more. The chest or lats more. So if you're more flared on your pullovers, it's going to be a little bit more chest. If you tuck the elbows, it'll bias a little bit more of your lats. Where the exercise gets criticized, the dumbbell pullover, is the fact that it's a free weight exercise and the resistance profile isn't constant throughout the full range. So as you pull the weight up over your head, there's not really much resistance there on those upper body muscles. So where you can circumvent that limitation is you can just work on the slow negative towards the arms overhead and even add in some partials just out of that deep stretch.
Yeah, that's interesting. When I do the dumbbell pullover, I feel it mostly in my triceps. So I think potentially just adjusting the form might be a good idea to see if I can feel it more in my back or more in my chest.
Yeah, this is another good point about ideally you want to feel the target muscle working during or after a set by the pump or just the tension that you're feeling in your upper body. But with a compound exercise such as a pullover, you won't necessarily always feel it in this one localized spot because you've got a lot of prime movers, triceps, chest, lats, teres in the rotator cuff. And that's where choosing your exercises purely based on feel isn't the best thing to do unanimously.
Absolutely. So I have a fun question for you. What is your Mount Rushmore, your 4 favorite upper body movements for hypertrophy and why?
These questions are always tough, aren't they? Because there's so many muscle groups, so many movements. There's my friendly disclaimer before I kick into my 4 favorites. The first one has to be the pull-up / chin-up. I'll put them in the same exercise category.
Yeah.
A bit cheeky there, but it's still a vertical pull. I mean, so much is known about this in terms of just working the whole back musculature. You've got a lot of progression capacity there with weight added. You can go single arm with this exercise. And it just offers a lifetime of variation as well as ability to keep doing it long term, getting both muscle and strength depending on what rep range you're doing, etc. Next up, let's go on to another calisthenics movement. It's probably going to be all calisthenics if you're cool with that.
I didn't want to say your top 4 calisthenics because I wanted to give you the space in case they weren't all.
Oh, man, good podcast host right here. I appreciate you. Handstand push-up, vertical press of calisthenics. It's essentially your replacement for a military press with barbells or dumbbells. I love it because you can use a wall with this exercise to take out any of that balance component. So if you're interested in hypertrophy and you want to use calisthenics, you can push this bad boy to failure and also beyond. What's cool is you gain control over your body. So if you're doing your handstands practice as well, you can do handstand push-ups freestanding, which is one of the most badass exercises to be able to defy gravity, move your body in space, and it opens up the doors to other exercises such as deficit handstand push-ups, 90-degree push-ups, all the crazy stuff you guys have seen on social media as well. Exercise number 3, I'm going to go with the front lever. I really like this exercise, and a big part of exercise we enjoy are ones that we are naturally predisposed to being good at. So based on my limb length, I'm more of a puller than I am a pusher. It naturally comes a bit easier to me. So I had success early on with learning the front lever and just being able to hold your body horizontal and essentially look like there's been a still taken of you from the side, and you're just chilling there, holding that position. It once again looks really dominant as an exercise. And there is room as well to do this front lever beyond just isometrics. You can do a bodyweight pullover, essentially a front lever pull where you can start to hang, you can pull yourself up, you come back down. You want to go full range? You got it, mate. You can go all the way up to an inverted hang, come back down. So you can see how this, if you wanted to do freestyle, integrates into that type of stuff with calisthenics where you can combine exercises and have fun in that respect. Exercise number 4. We've got to give a calisthenics one here. I'm torn between the dip and the push-up. The part of me that wants to be special here and go outside the box wants to say push-up, but I'm going to go with what's going to help most people, which is the dip. Squat of the upper body. I mean, you just have to see people loading up this exercise to know that you will never outgrow the dip. We're seeing people do dips with 120, 150 kilos.
Wow.
Granted, they're using essentially powerlifting equipment such as sleeves for the elbows to help and whatnot, but the ones that can lift 150 kilos on a sleeved up dip could at least do 100 plus kilos. So full respect goes out to those people. But you listening, the average fitness enthusiast, the dip, if it suits your shoulders, it feels fine. I think it's such a good movement. Anterior delts, triceps, huge chest movement. And once again, you can vary your body posture to target different muscle groups there as well. And of course, the ring dip. See how I'm getting all these bonus exercises in here by using the same one. You've got the option of doing your ring dips, lots of degrees of freedom, feels really comfortable in the joints, train anywhere, anytime. Even if you're holidays, traveling, you're set. So there's my 4 calisthenics movements. We've got 2 push, 2 pull for balance, because we don't want any muscle asymmetry, do we? No way. We can't be asymmetrical up in here.
Yeah, and you had a really good dip tip where instead of facing inwards, it was facing outwards. And I actually found that to just feel easier when I was doing dips.
Yeah, fantastic. And that's can be the tricky part of doing dips, especially in commercial gyms, where you've either got the rack where it's super narrow, it feels awkward, or you got to go super wide and it just jacks up your shoulders. What Varun was talking about there was the different orientations of bars. If you've got V-shaped dip bars, play around with facing in, see how it feels with your shoulders. Do you feel strong, pain-free? Play around with facing outwards in the rack. That might feel better for your shoulders because it externally rotates them.
Awesome. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw out some quotes you've said in the past. I'll say the quote and then tell me the first thing that comes to mind. Some of them are said by you and some of them are just famous quotes that I think you've mentioned. So the first is, "It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better."
Teddy Roosevelt, the OG, mate. He knows what he's talking about. This is words of wisdom coming from someone who is in the public eye, who is making decisions, making statements where they've got people's best interests at heart, but you're never going to get everyone on your side. I mean, if you want people to not disagree with you, you got to say nothing, do nothing, and you'll probably be nothing. So this quote helps me to have a little bit more peace, knowing that even if I try and do everything correctly, you're not going to be correct all the time, and people will disagree, and that's completely fine.
Yeah, and I think it takes time to really have the confidence to do that. I would say earlier on in my podcast, maybe a year ago, I was trying to be a little bit more conservative with my questions and my responses. And it's taken actually quite some time to just be more authentic, just to know that, okay, not everyone's going to like what I have to say, but I'd rather be authentic than kind of live in this small conservative world where I know I'm not offending anyone.
Yeah, or you have to caveat every single thing that you say, and it just gets a little bit much, because at the end of the day, we all have opinions. We do. I think it's just having them in a respectful way is the difference between getting people on your side or getting people very defensive. And that's the really hard part about communication, and where your short form social media platforms, your Instagrams, your TikToks, where it's just very fast. I think that's a tricky part of human communication, where we don't have the time to do the criticism sandwich. I think you're great, but this could improve, but you're also great. You're putting the medicine in between, but you're not just coming out and saying, mate, I think you're wrong. You're an idiot. You're ugly. You're weak. Get off the internet.
Yeah, like someone like Joe Rogan, who does a really long podcast, is really good at picking out the specific thing that he disagrees with the guest. So he gives that framework of, I agree with you on these 5 points, but I want to talk about this one point. That way you're discussing the point as opposed to saying you're wrong to the person. But you need time to do that. You can't do that in 20 seconds.
No, you can't. And with time, people can relate to this in any profession that they do. We all know that, you're not going to be the expert on every single topic, and it's okay not to have all the answers. And I am glad that I learnt this early in my physiotherapy career, where I would have patients and I just had no idea what was wrong with them. And I just said to them blankly, you know what, your case, I haven't come across this before. I'm just going to have a chat with my supervisor who's really experienced. I just want to get the best possible outcome for you. Just give me a minute. And just embodying that into other areas of my professional life through YouTube, teaching people, it gives you a little bit of humility as well. And then when you get these comments, the criticisms and stuff, especially if they're constructive, given that it's not super acute and you're highly emotionally strung, you can absorb that and improve over time. And I think that's something that I've been able to do over the past 15 years of doing this stuff. And it's a key form of progression. It's beyond just the gym. It's about becoming, a well-rounded person that has this delicate balance of confidence, self-belief, but also is willing to learn from people, because it's rare to get feedback. And if you get feedback that, makes you feel a certain way, you get a little bit defensive, that's often the stuff you need to listen to, because rarely are you going to get that. Most of the time, people just don't care about you.
Yeah, that's great feedback. That, there's two types of negative feedback. There's the trolls, and you just ignore the trolls. And then there's people that are being honest and transparent with you. And it might even be a peer. And at that point, it might just involve a little bit of humility and self-reflection. And that's how you grow.
Yeah, I really encourage people that are listening to take that into their life, because I don't think it makes you fragile. I think it makes you stronger as a result. In the moment, you're probably thinking, oh, the other person might believe that I'm incompetent or that I'm a pushover or something. It really depends on how you handle it, and how you handle it privately, I guess.
Yeah, I think you're actually more likely to be fragile if you can't control your emotions in that time and be logical and honest with yourself. You're actually, maybe appearance-wise, you're acting like you're not fragile and you're alpha, but when the door's closed, right? That's the only thing that matters, is when the door's closed and no one's there and the lights are off.
I
It's
think it's
what do you know?
particularly challenging for men as well, because we're on average seen as the ones that have got to put up, the brave face and not be able to dive deeper into these things of why did that comment affect me? Oh, it's because I haven't been doing enough self-reflection and da-da-da-da-da.
All right, I'm going to move this one a little bit more to training, but not completely.
Philosophy FAQs in the house here. Let's go,
I
boys.
love the philosophy stuff. All right, fall in love with the process, not the outcome. I've made the mistake of placing too much importance on results, robbing me of satisfaction along the way. Achieving a goal is short-lived. Feeling empty after reaching the destination is a problem with tunnel vision and lack of perspective.
Agree to this day, because the more advanced you get, the slower the progress is, the longer it takes you to get the gratification of achieving the goal, achieving the PR. And we spend so much time in the present, but we're not present. Oh, I got to work hard for that next workout next week, or, I'm trying to achieve this goal in the future, instead of working on what is in your face at the moment. Because if you're not being present, then you're not putting enough effort in that you could if you weren't distracted. And if you're not being present, you can't auto-regulate accurately. You might just push when it's time to pull back, or you might be pulling back when it's time to push. So this idea of being present helps you with enjoying what you're doing in the moment, but it also allows you to inadvertently get to the goal perhaps faster, and at large enjoy that process of eventually getting there. Because you get to the top of the mountain, it's great for a moment, but if you compare all the hundreds or thousands of hours that you invest into your training, then if you're focused on the former, then you'll be a bit depressed. If you focus on the latter of being present, happy days, you can't lose.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think that just applies to training. Like, you run a successful business as well. It's the same thing, right? Like you need to enjoy every day in the process because ultimately how you live your days is how you live your life. So you
Yeah,
can you can want the highlight reel, but really when you look back, it's that day to day. And people will say it's a grind, but if you enjoy what you're doing and you're present and you're putting in good effort, then there's a lot there where it doesn't even feel like work at times.
definitely. What does your average Tuesday look like? And, when it's not the highlight reel on social media where you're traveling, hanging out with, some celebrity or
Yeah.
I don't know what people post on social media. What does your normal day look like? You celebrate those small little wins along the way. I really resonate with this quote. I probably said this more than 5 years ago, and I'm still, you come back to these little gems and idioms, and you just feel good about them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this one is still on the same tangent here. It's a small one. It's just embrace simplicity over complexity.
Oh yeah. Circling back to what we said about before, your old school exercises in calisthenics, your compounds, in weightlifting, your just barbell, dumbbell lifts, your basic machines. This simplicity allows you to tick every category of movement and muscle that you need to train to build muscle and build strength. And then if you have almost like a horse, those blinders on, these are my exercises. I'm going to give my heart and soul into these movements. I know there's all this other stuff on TikTok, cross body variation, awesome. Understand the science. There's this new isolation movement for the tricep where we're anchoring the elbow and it's better because, etc. Awesome. But you have your blinders on for stuff that you enjoy, feels good for your body, that you can progress, and while you're trending upwards over time, other people are going to be program hopping, trying to get this complexity. Maybe the answer is in some new exercise variation. I hate to break it to you, chances are that it's not. It's the simplicity that allows you to constrain variables and not hide away from intensity.
Yeah, I even find that on the nutrition side of things. Like people are so complex with nutrition. And I have people ask me all the time, how do I lose 15 pounds or whatever it might be? And my answer is always the same. And it's not necessarily the most helpful, but I think it's the fundamental question to answer. And that's how do you find foods that you enjoy, that keep you full, that put you in a calorie deficit that you can adhere to for a long time? And
There's
if you
always a
can solve that
consensus.
problem, then you'll be successful. I'm not saying it's easy to solve, but it's better that you have a good, powerful question to answer than someone just saying, eat more broccoli. Like, again, it involves that reflection. And I think training's the same way.
Yeah, another quote for you here. Methods are many, but principles are few. Nutrition, exercise, when you strip it back, there's many ways to skin a cat with how you do a workout, what exercise vessel you use, what is the resistance method. But at the end of the day, it's all built on those foundational principles that we know with exercise science. I don't need to repeat them ad nauseum. And the same thing applies to the world of nutrition. Remember back in the day where it was, intermittent fasting is superior to any other form of nutrition because it's just inherently superior because of the release of hormones and all this stuff. But calories in, calories out can't be refuted. No matter what ideology you subscribe to with nutrition, that is one of the core principles that you have to obey in order to maintain, gain, or lose weight. Now, how you do that is infinite. Vegan, paleo, etc. But you're still having to tick those major boxes we all agree with, the principles. Micronutrients, macronutrients, protein, carbs, fats. How you do that is up to your individual makeup, preferences, and the complexities of your biology.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to move into a training question here, and I think this is a fun one. Are you more proud of a skill like a one-arm pull-up, which comes naturally to you, or something like a straddle planche?
So this question is highlighting, are you more proud of things that come easier to you but are still impressive to the naked eye, or things that are impressive but come harder to you? Something in me is wired to associate a lot of meaning to a challenge. If I get an outcome, but I didn't put much effort in, and say, use the example of YouTube. Say I make a video where I didn't put much effort in, much research, and it just blows up, does really well. In my mind, I don't consider that much of an achievement by comparison to a video which I spent 20 hours researching, producing, filming from scratch, which is a bit perverse, right? Because on the surface, what's the objective? Reach, education. I should be proud either way, right? But I think that's just the way that you can be wired if you're a bit more type A personality, very conscientious. You associate a lot of meaning with the struggle. So for me, when it comes to the training stuff, the planche was more meaningful because it was hard.
And what was your PR for that?
I got a 5-second straddle planche hold at 6 foot, 85 kilos.
Crazy.
Pretty proud of it, yeah. And looking back, it was even more arduous because I was still trying to do all my sets and reps, plus tack on the skill stuff. Maybe inadvertently trying to make it even harder for myself so I could be extra proud of that planche.
Very cool. Yeah, I feel like when you look back, when people talk about their highlights or the things that they're proud of, it's usually things that were difficult and that they had to overcome. You are usually less inherently proud of your talents because the talents that are given to you are there, but it's those things that you were less talented on and you still did. Like you just end up being a little bit more proud of that. At least that's my experience.
And you relate this to the standard hero story that is in every movie ever written. It's always about the struggle and the triumph because everyone can relate to that. We all know that life isn't easy. It takes a lot of effort, a lot of sacrifice. You're not guaranteed to get any type of outcome. So we really resonate with these stories because we can relate to the protagonist. We could imagine ourselves struggling and, being teased or, not trusting ourselves, having that imposter syndrome, but then we get the win and it feels awesome. Let's compare that with you just get someone who was born to look beautiful. They're born to be strong. They've come into a lot of money through nepotism. They rise to the top of whatever their endeavor is, sport, business. It's just not cool by comparison.
For sure. Yeah. It's like if you're a billionaire because your dad was a billionaire, it's not the same as the person that shouldn't have made it out of the ghetto and they made it and they put it together and they defeated all odds and they built a business. And like, it's such a different story that we can connect with as individuals.
Comes back to process versus outcome goals. The person that struggles has to learn. They're forced to, because if they didn't learn, they would remain the same or not, achieve their goal. They'd just give up. Whereas the person that has been given everything, they don't really have to take a deep dive into their weaknesses because they're just naturally predisposed to get to the outcome.
Absolutely. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw a couple of pictures on the screen. For the first one, there's a bunch of people, some people that you've trained with, some people that you've interviewed, and some that you've mentioned. You can talk about all of them or a few of them. Just tell me if there's either a story, something you learned from them. I'll throw this on the screen here. So a lot of people on this screen here. So you can start wherever you'd like, and you can talk about as many or as little as you want. Here we go.
This is the exercise tier list of the podcast with FitnessFAQs. Damn, there's a lot of big boys here. A lot of shredded physiques. We've got a lot of smiles in each of the shots, which is very nice to see. Firstly, at the top there, with one that stands out is the recent collab there with Jeff. We can see a nice sweat stain there on the stomach, which is indicative of a lot of work. You'd think by comparison, looking at me there, looks like I've just got out of the shower, but I've finished a grueling workout there. And that just satisfaction there comes from connecting with a fellow gym bro. And I think this is something we can all relate to. When you get on the same page with someone, you are able to, push each other quite hard. And that's something we should all seek as, a friendship that you can have in the gym and beyond the gym as well. Next up, we have on the right there, Eugene Teo. So this man is a very intelligent person. I think he was well ahead of his time with the social media age. So he started doing international workshops very early on. He also invited guests out to Melbourne, such as Tom Platz, John Meadows. Being able to do that, the very inception of social media, and then leverage that into a business. So moving beyond just regular personal training and making a career out of fitness was, very inspirational to me, seeing what's possible with leverage. Seeing him open up his own space was also incredible. Huge warehouse gym that he's got there specifically for filming. And I definitely followed in his footsteps in both respects, doing some international workshops myself through America as well as Europe, and also eventually opening up my own space here where I can film and get the message out there with FitnessFAQs. We also have on the right there Austin Dunham, one of the other OGs in the calisthenics space. I got to collab with him in 2019 when I was traveling throughout the States. One of the interesting stories there was we did a food challenge. So, after a few days of filming content, you're obviously pretty depleted. You've been pretty on point with your diet for some time, quite diced and low body fat percentage. So even the thought of a battered chicken breast sounds absolutely enticing. We went to a bunch of places. Roscoe's Chicken. It's had some nice some nice waffles there with some ice cream and whatnot, which coming from Australia just sounded completely foreign on paper. I thought, this sounds like such an American type of combination. I'm not going to like it, but I'm a fan. I'm definitely a fan. The flavor profile, and it definitely hit the spot. And we didn't stop there. We continued to get some donuts. And if you dive deep enough through the archives of Austin's channel, there's actually some vlogs there. So if you're keen to watch me not talk about fitness or calisthenics and just eat a bunch of food, eat ice cream. Yeah. I think this is the only dance content that people want. Don't worry about, the shirtless oiled up photos. I think they want to see me just doing a mukbang or something like that. We're moving on. Let's get through these peeps. Eric Bugenhagen. Oh man. Intensity infectious, passion infectious. That's what you get when you're hopped up on over 1,000 milligrams of caffeine a day. But I think even without the caffeine, Eric is an absolute legend. I'd love to meet him in person and horse cock some weights someday. I'd love to, potentially hang with him with some weighted dips and weighted pull-ups. I think I'd be crushed by any form of deadlift or free weight dumbbell barbell, but I would do my best to bring the vibes and train as hard as I possibly can without getting injured. That is the only thing that scares me from training with Eric, would be your chance of injury would be pretty high.
50-50.
Yeah, 50-50, because he'd be there yelling in your ear, probably have some metal music on either side of your ears, but it'd be a great time. Next, we have Kino Body. I really like how he targets fitness to what the average person would want. We want to have a decent amount of muscle mass, a lean physique, something that's sustainable without a huge time commitment. And I think there's something for that in the fitness industry, because if you go down the rabbit hole of anything, calisthenics, powerlifting, bodybuilding, it's an all or nothing thing for the most part. I think the cream rises to the top, and we just assume that unless we're pushing it to the absolute max, training 6-7 days a week, that we're doing something wrong. But, not everyone has the luxury of doing fitness as a full-time profession. We have full-time jobs, families, possibly other hobbies as well. And his approach of minimalism to build a physique, I'm really on board with it. I think that I can see why it resonates with a lot of people. Ivan Juric, Mr. Squat Every Day. This gentleman loves fitness. You can tell that it's in his DNA deep down. He's not doing this for money. He's not doing this for views. You could tell that if there was no one watching his content, this would be his form of therapy and a diary to himself, because it's almost more philosophical than it is about the training itself. It's about building your character, showing up when you don't want to, but you know you should. And learnt a lot from him doing a podcast on my channel. And just the key takeaway is how you feel is often a lie. Of course, you need to use sound judgment and auto-regulation, but there's been so many times where you think you're going to go into the gym and have a bad workout because you're sore, tired, emotionally drained. You get in, you warm up, you set PRs. And then conversely, you can have a day where, oh man, I had my 10 hours sleep, nutrient timing on point, stress is at an all-time low, but you really just struggle to get things moving. Next, Alex Leonidas, one of the fellow noble natties, as it's colloquially termed, really has progressed a lot in his training over the past decade plus. Absolute sponge. You can tell that he is not dogmatic when it comes to this is the best way. You've got to do this form of high intensity or low volume, or you have to do calisthenics, or you have to lift weights. It's about choosing the right tool for the job. And that's really uplifting because it gives you so many options for what you can do with your training, and you can keep doing this long term. I love how he works out at home, and it's very relatable to people that have some type of basement home gym where they're just, you know, a solo warrior just in the trenches themselves, showing up consistently, putting in the work. And I really admire anyone that's been in the game for a long time, training hard themselves. But also hats off to Leonidas, because I know how hard it is as a content creator to, you know, keep moving things forward, being consistent. And it can be difficult at times to just give yourself all the time. And he's done this for a very long time. So respect goes out to Alex. This next one here is a picture from 2013. This is Ryan Durst of Gold Medal Bodies. It is a calisthenics and mobility focused company where they teach mainly bodyweight stuff for the average person. This is a very early photo from 2013. He came to my house. My mum made us coffee. You know, she's in the other room there. I was sitting down. I think this was my first type of interview /
I think so.
podcast
That's why I put
did.
it there. I think it was your first interview.
And for anyone that thinks, oh, you know, look at Daniel. He's so, you know, on camera, he's pretty comfortable. He's good at talking. Just watch some of my earlier stuff. This is why I keep it up, because I am more of a shy, introverted person. And you can see here, I'm, you know, trying to blossom like a little butterfly, getting his experience by doing the thing. So still a good interview, but that is a 17, 18-year-old me right there. Ben Patrick, knees over toes, really did revolutionize the fitness industry by bringing into light a lot of range of motion concepts that were missing from just general fitness, and more of a minimalist type of approach, you could say, as well. He's got his big movements that he teaches, and there's regressions and progressions built into that, which is awesome for, you know, getting full control of your body. There's a lot of athletic merit in what he does, being able to make yourself more bulletproof, injury resilient by training awkward ranges of motion. And it's a great way to work out if you just want to feel good moving around. You know, being able to squat ass to grass, being able to bend over backwards, get good articulation of all of your different joints. Are you going to be the world's biggest bodybuilder following ATG, knees over toes philosophy? No, that's not the goal. I think it's about supporting longevity, supporting athletic development, and trying to get a good bang for your buck with the few exercises that you do. Here we go. All right,
Sorry, there's so many people.
No, I love it. I love it. We've got the pioneer, Adam Sneaky. He's my brother from over the pond, you know, same type of thinking with being more of a generalist, trying to have people's best interests in heart when it comes to all things fitness. I love that he explores a lot of different movement and exercise modalities, bodyweight fitness. He does kettlebells, and he also is not afraid to fringe out and do some things that you don't normally see, like plyometric based stuff. He's filming out in nature, which is pretty fun to see. And he's a real positive person when it comes to the fitness industry. He really does his research. He used to be a writer, and he's transitioned that into his fitness profession. His videos, you could see, are almost like essays. Good mix of education, introspection, and just food for thought, going beyond what you would hear in a 1-minute TikTok video, no doubt. Coach Bachman, a handstand professional, also very good at calisthenics, great production value on his videos, great consistency with his posts too. One of the few people who early on knows the importance of outsourcing tasks, i.e. editing, getting a team to help him focus on what he does best, which is presenting and whatnot. It's great to see an educator who is also a high-level athlete. So he used to do Cirque du Soleil. So people that have been in that world, I definitely respect their experience, because they would have learned from the world's best, the type of coaches, the handstand coaches that are just out in these really foreign countries that aren't posting on social media. So that his information is going to be really sound across the board. Hannibal for King, one of the first people in this list that got me into calisthenics. The first people that did get me into calisthenics is, if we go up to the top left of the screen, the Barbarians. This was my induction into calisthenics in 2009. Very fortunate to be just scrolling across the internet, finding their Barbarian forums, and also seeing their YouTube videos, which indoctrinated me, in a good sense, into the calisthenics philosophy of sets, reps, basics, pushing yourself hard, essentially since I started when I was 16, 17. So I owe a lot to Zeph in the top left there from the Barbarians for setting the tone for my values when it comes to fitness, of work ethic, consistency, humility with yourself to always keep learning, and challenging everyone around you to rise as well. So without them, I wouldn't be here on this podcast, no doubt about that. So this was pre-algorithmic internet, everyone, in 2009-10, where you search calisthenics and you search for what you want to have an interest in. And just glad that I found that instead of going down different paths in life or other avenues of fitness that I may not have enjoyed so much. So we're circling back to Hannibal for King, which you can see why as a teenager, if you saw even just a photo of this gentleman,
ripped,
you want to look like that. Just absolutely jacked, low body fat percentage, good muscularity, all from bodyweight exercise. And then you'd come across these compilations of him doing all just bodyweight exercises. And what's fantastic about that as a young person, you don't even need a gym membership. So you can just close the video of seeing this beast and you can do some push-ups on the floor, get a little pump. You think, wow, I kind of like this. And then it opens doors to keep going, and you start to see transformations in your physique. You start to see improvements in your performance with doing more reps on every exercise. And it's this positive feedback loop. So definitely got a bunch of motivation from Hannibal for King. And I think it's someone that people could check out some of the OG videos just to see that grainy 240p, just motivation right there. Eric Helms, do we need an introduction for this man? Just highly intellectual, great communicator, great natural physique, great person who is not controversial, bringing other people down to get their message across. It's just about the information. It's about conveying it. It's about understanding. And I think he's doing great work. He's done great work. And he's definitely been a part of helping people understand how to program exercise selection getting through the weeds of the complexity of fitness and trying to bring it all together so you can have a plan and attack your training with a lot of confidence that what you're doing is the consensus of the scientific community. We have there, I haven't seen this person in a long time, Calisthenics Kings.
Yeah.
He's in that same school of Hannibal for King on the left and also the Barbarians in the top left. Once again, great physique, doing calisthenic movements, making it seem possible to achieve good level of muscle mass naturally, and just the vibes, man. These dudes were just, good music on in the videos, some good message about, push through, you're going to want to stop, all these things that you want to hear as a kid or someone getting into fitness to make you encouraged to reach your next level. Bottom right, we have one of the European beasts, Vitaly Feschuk. If you're looking for that heavyweight motivation in calisthenics, look no further. He is, I think, around 100 kilos, and he's doing planches, he's doing heavy pull-ups, dips, but he's making it look so easy, and he's got the physique as well to accompany this. He has a really animalistic aggression in his videos, which is pretty fun to see when you're on social media, and you can channel a bit of that into your workouts. And I really like seeing other people try. More than anything, you can see pretty much everyone on this list puts effort into what they do. They're passionate, and I'm really humbled to be put in this group of people in my picture there in the top right.
Awesome. Amazing. Thank you for running through all those people. I'm sure it was a lot of work and a lot of reflection. So I'm going to finish things off today with a little bit of a deep question here. So you've talked about your legacy being to educate and empower people to master calisthenics, to become strong like a gymnast, look like a bodybuilder, and have the flexibility to move freely. So in that respect, what advice would you give to young Daniel?
I would tell myself to take more risks. Despite being in the game for so long, I still do believe I had more potential in terms of posting more content, saying yes to more opportunities when it comes to public speaking, workshops, these type of things to get experience. Trying not to have too much pressure on yourself that any one moment is a complete definition of who you are, because you're going to have setbacks. You're going to feel embarrassed at times that you didn't get things correct. And it's easy for that to bleed into every area of your life. And I would just really encourage myself that the best learning is through practice. And by taking on challenges, you're going to grow quicker than getting dejected, being shy, not putting yourself out there, and taking too long to get the courage to try things again.
Yeah, that's great advice. I think that's advice we'd all want to tell our younger selves. Like, don't be scared, take the risk. But in that moment, it's hard.
Yeah. And I'll say, don't be scared. I would say, be scared, but have the courage to face the fear anyway. Because you're going to feel it. No one's immune to it. No matter who it is, you're going to get some anxiety. It's about telling yourself that these feelings are normal as part of a pressure situation that you put on yourself, but it's how you respond to that in the moment and afterwards, which is more important than any single outcome that happens.
Yeah, bravery isn't the absence of fear. It's having the fear and doing it anyways.
Straight bars right there, brother.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. Where can everyone find you?
No worries. That was a great chat. You're an excellent podcaster. I'm hoping to see you do more with other people in the fitness space too.
Appreciate it.
FitnessFAQs.com for calisthenics programs to become strong like a gymnast, look like a bodybuilder, and get the flexibility to move freely. Otherwise, FitnessFAQs across every social media platform.
Thank you so much for your time. Take care.
Awesome. Take care.